By devoting just 6 minutes each weekday for 1 year, you can read through the entire New Testament using David's servant's daily devotional, HeavenWord Daily. Order your copy at heavenword.tv.
God bless you. Thank you so much for joining me as we continue our chronological study through the entire New Testament. That chronological study is taking us now through the Epistle of James, believed to be the very first epistle that was penned in our New Testaments. And we just have gotten started. It's been rich. I'm enjoying it. Hope you're enjoying it as well. We're in James chapter 1 and right around verse number 5. But last time we were talking about God's divine purposes in the trials that we go through. And oftentimes, it's thought that James was a little bit scatterbrained in his presentation in his epistle because he seems like he jumps around to different themes. He starts off by talking about trials and what to do in them. Then he starts talking about how to get wisdom. And then he talks about what to do if you're feeling a little bit poor and so forth. But I don't think so. I think James is introducing sub-themes in this first chapter that fit right in with his main theme of what to do in a trial. And I'm just going to point out one little piece of evidence to support that in relationship to what we talked about last time as we discussed the first couple of verses that relate to what to do in a trial and the benefits of going through a trial and being steadfast. If we jump all the way down to verse number 12, of James 1, James writes, "Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, for once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life which the Lord has promised to those who love him." And so that leads me to think that James was not a scatterbrained writer, but that, the subject is trials, and between verse number 4 and verse number 12, the other things that he talks about are related to the trial theme. Okay? All right. So let's try to read it, with that in mind, believing that James was logical in his presentation. Naturally, we don't have the advantage that his contemporary readership had because they knew exactly what they were going through. They knew exactly the issues that were being talked about. They knew exactly what James was saying when he was correcting certain things because that's the things that they were, hearing about and perhaps involved in to whatever degree. Okay? But with that in mind, look at verse number 5. It begins with the word "but." And James writes, "But if any of you lacks wisdom." Now, that's connected to what we read in verse number 4, because he said, if you will let endurance have its perfect result so that you'll be complete and perfect, lacking in nothing. Okay, so the last 3 words are lacking in nothing. That is, trials have a way of producing good spiritual qualities and character in us, and the ultimate result is we lack none of those good things that God wants us to have. But there's something else you might lack you're not going to get by going through a trial, and that is wisdom. But if any of you lacks wisdom, this is a different thing. Let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him. So, obviously there's a flow from verse 4 to verse number 5. Lacking in nothing, verse 4, then verse 5, but if any of you lacks wisdom, here's how to get it. And also within the greater context of these are people who have been suffering persecution, going through trials, lost their homes and livelihoods in Jerusalem, scattered, around, and really going through rough times. And looking for, a word from the Lord, looking for wisdom and understanding, because that's something that you really need in a trial to help you keep your perspective right, so you don't abandon your faith, so you don't make a stupid decision and go back to Jerusalem and say, forget that Jesus stuff, I'm going to just be a regular Jew and keep my job, stay in my house, okay? So wisdom is always related to things in the future. Do something right now that's proves to be wise, because in the future, it's wise to everybody. Wisdom isn't always so obvious right now, but lack of wisdom or wisdom becomes obvious when you look back in retrospect. So that's why we need God's help when it comes to wisdom, because he knows the future. He knows everything. He's looking at everything from the perspective of eternity, and he's able to offer us wisdom so we can get a little bit of his wisdom and do the right thing now, so that later on we can look back and say, whoa, wasn't I wise? Even though back then people were saying, you're a fool. No doubt. Many of their Jewish friends who did not believe in Jesus were saying that very thing to them in so many words. You fool. Well, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. Well, it is worth it if you look at the final eternal result. So if any of you lacks wisdom, if you don't know what is the right thing to do, that you're going to look back 10 or 20 or a million years from now and say, I did the right thing. If any of you lacks that, then here's what to do. Let him ask of God. All right? Wow, that's profound. Profound. Lord, I want to see things from your perspective. Lord, please give me your wisdom so I do the right thing now, so I don't look back with regret, but I look back with satisfaction. Please give me some wisdom here. And when you're in a trial, you're tempted to do the stupid thing. Right? Right. And so you want to do the wise thing, but you don't know it's wise until, unless you look at it from an eternal perspective, the bigger picture. But there's a caveat here. James says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men generously and without reproach, or gives to all generously without reproach, and it will be given to him, but let him ask in faith without any doubting. So there's a condition. Unmistakable condition. If you're going to get wisdom from God, you have to ask with faith, without doubting. And that sounds just like what Jesus taught, which shouldn't surprise us because James is a follower of Jesus. Okay, more on faith, and I'll see you next time.
HeavenWord 7 is made possible by the financial support of viewers like you. Thank you.